even if today is your first time, that's perfectly fine to join in at whatever time you can. So once again, we welcome you, and we'll begin with opening prayers in the booklet that you may have, the Buddha of Compassion.
So we'll chant this prayer, the first prayer in the booklet 3 times.
Organ yogi num jansam, Bemage sardombola, Yatsem chogi ngorubne, Bemajone jesurak, Kodukandro mambogor, Yedki jesudak druki, Jinjilo cheer sheksu so, Guru Bama City Om. Organ yogi num jansam, Bemage sardombola, Yatsem chogi ngorubne, Bemajone jesurak, Kodukandro mambogor, Yedki jesudak druki, Jinjilo cheer sheksu so, Guru Bema City Om. Organ yogi num jansam, Bemage sardombola, Yatsem chogi ngorubne, Bemajone jesurak, Kodukandro mambogor, Yedki jesudak druki, Jinjilo cheer sheksu so, Guru Bema City Om. Good morning. Good morning. So as Shelley mentioned, this is the 4th class in a series of 6 classes. In the first class in this series, we discussed why the practice of Tonglen is so helpful for this moment. And the practice of Tonglen is also called the practice of sending and receiving, or the practice of exchanging self and others. And in this practice, we take on the sufferings of others and we send them our happiness. And in the first class, I talked about just why that practice is so helpful right now. And then in order to understand the nature of the suffering that we are trying to relieve beings of, then and why beings suffer, we spent the next couple of classes discussing karma, or cause and effect, and how karma functions and how karma manifests as the 6 realms of cyclic existence. So a quick refresher on that. In the 6 realms of cyclic existence, whether beings are born in the higher realms or the lower realms, they are trapped in this wheel of existence, taking rebirth again and again and again in each of these 6 realms. And the beings of these realms are all suffering, but the beings of the lower realms suffer just terribly, like worse than we could ever imagine. The hell beings suffer from heat and cold. Hungry ghosts suffer from hunger and thirst. Animals suffer from stupidity and mental dullness and fear. And then the beings of the higher realms have less suffering, but they still suffer. So we've got the human realm, where we suffer from primarily from birth, sickness, old age, and death. among other things like being separated from people we love or having to spend time with people we don't like, or, all of these other things that we suffer from. And then the jealous gods suffer from constant jealousy and fighting. And then the long-lived gods enjoy this long, opulent, pleasurable life. But then at the end of it, they suffer because at the end of it, suddenly all of their everything beautiful about their life starts to decay and become gross, and they suddenly realize that they've wasted all their time enjoying these hedonistic pleasures, and that they've used up all their good fortune, and they can see that they will be reborn in the hell realms, and so they suffer at the end of their life. So anyways, all of these beings, no matter whether they're in the higher realms or the lower realms, they all suffer. And in their misguided attempts to relieve their suffering and secure their happiness, beings tend to just sow more seeds of suffering and just keep themselves further and further entrenched in samsara by creating the causes that keep us here. So all of these beings who are imprisoned by their own karmic consequences have at one time or another been our own mother and father. So time and time again, we have lived so many lifetimes, more lifetimes than we can even imagine. I said in a previous class, if we just piled up all of our bodies from just our past lives when we were reborn as ants, the weight of those bodies would outweigh the earth. Like, we have been reborn so many times, it is unfathomable. And so there's so many beings too. But so basically, just if you add it all up, if you just imagine all of these beings being reborn again and again and again, we've all been each other's mother and father at some point. We've all taken care of each other. We've all, helped each other and protected each other and, tried to keep each other alive as like a little baby who doesn't know better. And we've cared for each other. And when we remember the inexpressible kindness of all of these beings who have once been our parents and how they've, shown us love, kept us safe, and cared for us, then, and thinking of how they're suffering now, we feel this great compassion well up in us, and we want to take care of them, and we want to help them however we can. So in the practice of Tonglen, we visualize taking on the sufferings of all beings and sending them our happiness. And this practice diminishes our self-cherishing, it deepens our compassion and loving kindness, and it also develops bodhicitta, the awakened mind committed to benefiting all beings. And that's what we'll be discussing today, is the bodhicitta. So in the 37 verses on the practice of a bodhisattva, it says, "If all the mothers who have loved me since beginningless time are suffering, what is the use of my own happiness? So with the aim of liberating limitless sentient beings, to set my mind on enlightenment is the practice of a bodhisattva." So there are two types of bodhicitta. There is the bodhicitta of intention and the bodhicitta of action. The bodhicitta of intention, or aspirational bodhicitta, also has two aspects. Compassion, which is directed towards beings, and wisdom, which is directed toward enlightenment. So neither of these aspects are expressed bodhicitta by themselves. You have to have both. Bodhicitta is the union of wisdom and compassion. On one hand, if you're not aiming for ultimate enlightenment, if you want to benefit beings and you so strongly want to benefit beings, but you're not aiming for ultimate enlightenment, then you're never going to go beyond ordinary kindness and compassion. And that will help beings in this life. You can help beings relieve their suffering of this life with ordinary kindness and compassion, but it's not going to help them solve this whole situation of being stuck in cyclic existence. So that's going to be temporary benefit. On the other hand, if you are trying to attain enlightenment, but only for your own sake, then you'll never go beyond the limited nirvana of Hinayana practitioners. So what do I mean by that? The Buddha's methods are categorized into 3 vehicles, in which we can travel to enlightenment. So we can imagine each of these paths as vehicles that, and if we get in one of these vehicles, it will take us to enlightenment. And they all work. It's important to know they all work. So in each school, we say, this school thinks that way and we think this way, and this is why our way is the way we practice. But that doesn't mean that any one of these is better than the other. So all of the Buddha's methods work. It just depends on each being's individual capacity and, where you're at, what you have a connection to, and there's a path for everyone. So it's important that just when discussing why we practice this path and not another path, we're not putting down any other paths. Just explaining the differences. So those in the Hinayana vehicle seek personal salvation from cyclic existence. They want to get out of samsara for themselves, while those in the Mahayana vehicle seek liberation for all beings. Within the Mahayana vehicle are the Vajrayana teachings, which is what we practice here. And the Vajrayana is also called the short path. So it still follows the Mahayana teachings, but there are some differences. But according to the Mahayana teachings, self-centeredness, or thinking about ourselves, even regarding liberation, just putting ourselves above others, is seen as the main obstacle to becoming Buddha. That personal nirvana, that personal emancipation from samsara that the Hinayana practitioners seek is not the same as Buddhahood. It's not the same as what we are seeking in the Mahayana path. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama said, the highest type of nirvana occurs at the level of Buddhahood. It is called a non-abiding nirvana because one is not abiding either in the extreme of cyclic existence or in the extreme of a solitary peace. Rather, one has brought to perfection one's own development as well as the capacity to affect the welfare of others. So that's what we're trying to do in the Mahayana path. So bodhicitta includes both wisdom and compassion. It's said in the Ornament of True Realization, bodhicitta is to aspire to enlightenment for the benefit of others. So Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche says, the absolute nature of everything is primordially pure, free of all conditions, and beyond any concepts of existence and non-existence. But within relative truth, self and others, suffering and happiness manifest in infinite ways. These appearances are devoid of any true existence, yet beings believe them to be true and thus wander deluded in samsara. So this relative reality that we see, this table feels solid. Everything I'm sitting on feels solid. You all seem really real. But this relative reality that we live in is more like a dream or an illusion or a soap bubble. It appears, it's like a rainbow. It appears, but it does not have inherent existence. So like a rainbow in the sky, you see the rainbow, but it's because there is the there's moisture in the air, there is light coming from a certain angle, and you are standing at a certain angle to the angle of the light, and all of that, right? And so the appearance of the rainbow is interdependent, and it relies on all of those factors. If you change your position, the rainbow disappears. If the light disappears, the rainbow disappears. If the cloud dries up, there's no rainbow. The rainbow doesn't exist on its own. It exists because these three factors create the appearance of it. And everything in our reality is held up through interdependence. So it doesn't have an inherent existence. Things are not, I think there's a quote from the Buddha that just things are not as real as they seem to be. I'm trying to remember a specific quote, but it's basically it's not that things aren't real, it's just that they're not as real as they seem to be. It's like a dream. So all of these beings are suffering because they don't understand this. We're existing in this delusion where we take this mirage to be true. And we don't understand the rules of living in this mirage, which are the rules of karma. When we live in this mirage, we are subject to the rules of karma. And if we steal from others, we're going to suffer deprivation in the future. If we harm others, we're going to suffer harm to our own life force. There is a cause and effect that occurs in this interdependent reality of relative truth. But in the ultimate truth, all of this is a dream, an illusion. So that's why we want to wake up. So we want to wake up, and we want to wake up all beings so that we don't have to suffer anymore from this illusion of separation that makes us suffer. Then when we think about all of these beings, all of these infinite number of beings who've been our parents in all our past lives, and they've loved us and cared for us, and they've given up their own lives to help us, to care for us as if we were little, turtles and little eggs they laid on a beach, or if we were their little spider babies or whatever form we were in, they cared for us in their particular way and very much try to keep us safe. And it would be heartless of us to forget the kindness that they have shown to us through all of these lifetimes. And so practicing just for our own liberation would be like doing that. It would be like forgetting our own parents and forgetting the kindness of our own parents. And if we imagine doing that in this life, if you were doing really well for yourself, if you were really wealthy and happy and you had everything you needed and you could go on fancy vacations and all of that, and your parents were living in rags on the street, you would be seen as shameful, for not taking care of the people who raised you, who took care of you. And people would judge you for that. And you're like, it's really your mom took care of you all your life, and you're going to let her live like that while you just live in comfort. So it's the same for all sentient beings. We can't forget the kindness that they showed to us. And we have to think of caring for them as we would care for our own parents of this life. Gyaltsang Luchu Togme, who wrote the 37 verses on the practice of the Bodhisattva, he said, if you don't take the suffering of all beings squarely on your shoulders, what's the use of receiving the supreme Mahayana teachings? He says this because bodhicitta is the essence of the Mahayana path. So there's no point in hearing the Mahayana teachings and listening to them if you're not going to strive to put bodhicitta into practice. That's what we're doing here, is we're practicing bodhicitta. So if people are not interested in bodhicitta, they could maybe go practice in the Hinayana path, and they could still practice a pure path and relieve themselves of suffering. And it would be better to do that than to try to pretend to be a Mahayana practitioner that doesn't care about anyone else, because that is not practicing Mahayana purely. What we are doing in the Mahayana path is we are caring for all beings, and we are putting them above ourselves. We put them first because there's more of them. We are all equal. All of us are equal. We all have the Buddha nature. We are all equal in our desire for happiness and our desire to avoid suffering. And but there's only one of me, and there's a lot of you. So, there's a lot of beings out there, and it's more than us. So because of that, we put all beings above ourselves, because we're all equal and there's more than them. There's more of them. There's more beings. And once the bodhicitta takes birth in your being, then Dogo Khyentse Rinpoche says at that point you are a true child of the Buddhas, and the Buddhas will always look on you with great happiness. And in all your lives to come, you will meet Mahayana teachers and benefit others. Your activity will join the ocean-like activity of all the bodhisattvas, who are full of compassion and appear in infinite forms, even as birds and wild animals, to benefit beings in infinite ways. Such an enlightened attitude benefits the whole country around you. So bodhisattva benefits all beings equally, with no distinction between friends and enemies. There's no need to curry favors with a bodhisattva. They will just help you. And if we, there are many ways to help beings, and if we give beings food and clothes and take care of their temporary needs, we can provide them temporary, limited relief. But it doesn't help them when they die, and it doesn't help them after their death. But if we can bring all beings to the Dharma and set them on the path to Buddhahood, then we can help them in a way that is both immediately beneficial and also will benefit them in the future, at the time of their death and beyond, in their future lives. So it's kind of like, so there's maybe we can think of a more Buddhist version of this phrase, but if you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a night, and if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a night, and if you teach a man to fish, he can feed his family forever, right? You can say gardening or something. If you give a guy a tomato, he'll eat a snack. If you teach him to garden, he'll be busy the rest of his life planting food. So we want to give people the tools to bring about their own happiness. We don't just want to give people something to satisfy what they need right now. We want to give them the tools that they can use to create future happiness, just the engine of future happiness, which is the Dharma. Knowing how to create the causes of happiness, knowing how to practice patience and generosity and discipline, and how to love others and how to care for others and do these things that then create the causes for future happiness. So that's how we can help beings actually free themselves from samsara and achieve enlightenment. And that's really the only way that we can repay their kindness, the kindness of our parents. Anything less than that is not enough. It's really the only way we can repay their kindness is to give them the same tools that we have. We have the ability to have these tools. We have this opportunity to practice and to liberate ourselves from this. So to give them less than what we have would not be adequate, would not be an adequate way to repay their kindness. And I want to be clear here that when we say bring all beings to the Dharma, we do not mean proselytizing, because we do not proselytize. That is a thing about this religion, is that is not what that means. So we really only tell people about the Dharma when they want to know about it. And because beings have to be ready to hear it. And so when we talk about bringing all beings to the Dharma, we're talking about praying for them. We're talking about in future lives, they will be there. We are not talking about going out and trying to convert everyone to Buddhism. But each of us has connections with beings that no one else has. So like, I know people you don't know, you know people I don't know. If we're all here, we all have a connection to Jetsima. This is Jetsima's temple that she built. If we're here, we somehow have a connection to Jetsima. But Jetsima doesn't have a connection to every single sentient being. But she has a connection to you, and you have a connection to someone. So through our karmic connections with others, when we arouse bodhicitta, when we become bodhisattvas, and we develop the ability to help beings, we can help the beings with whom we have a connection. And those beings might not have any other connection to the Dharma. You might be their only help. You might be the only person that they know that has this opportunity that could throw them a bone. So it's very important for each of us to, take advantage of the potential of this life, because there are beings who rely on us specifically, not on some Buddha out there, not on that great bodhisattva or that great bodhisattva, but on us specifically. So we shouldn't hoard all of our, we learn these teachings, we get all of our Dharma duds and our Dharma stuff, our malas and our statues and all of this stuff. And we shouldn't hoard all of that. We should dedicate everything that we do to all beings and make the wish that they will all be able to listen to and reflect on and meditate on the Dharma. Even just expressing a prayer like that is highly beneficial. Anything done with pure intention, even if all we're doing is wishing to relieve all beings of their headaches, that has so much merit. So if we are praying for something even bigger to free all beings from samsara, then the merit is all the more. And then since the number of beings is infinite, the merit of that prayer is also infinite. So bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is so important, and it really must be infused in our practice. If we're on the Mahayana path, bodhicitta is the essence of Mahayana. So if we're going to practice in the Mahayana path, then we have to practice with bodhicitta. How do we make sure that we are always practicing with bodhicitta? We do that by always observing what's called the 3 supreme points. And by practicing these, we can progress stage by stage along the path until we can actually gain understanding of absolute wisdom. So to have a thorough understanding of absolute wisdom is pretty difficult for ordinary people because we're not there yet. We're still very ordinary. So we progress stage by stage, and we want to make sure we go in the right direction so that we eventually gain this understanding of absolute wisdom. So to head in the right direction, we first start with an attitude based on the bodhicitta. So no matter what practice we are doing, if we're meditating or praying, or even if we're volunteering, or literally any action that you do throughout your life, you could start with this. Start with an attitude based on the bodhicitta. For your grocery shop, generate bodhicitta. Like, why not? Shop for food for all beings. But basically, we first create this wish to undertake the practice to attain enlightenment for the sake of all beings. And you'll hear at the beginning of a teaching or a sok, a lot of times we say just, okay, everyone arouse bodhicitta. Give rise to bodhicitta now. You give a little reminder. So we always start with that attitude, wishing to practice to attain enlightenment for the sake of all beings. And then while we're engaged in the main part of the practice, we should be free of concepts and distractions. And at the end, we conclude the practice with a dedication. So we always dedicate the merit at the end, and this protects the merit that we've gained from that practice from being destroyed by anger and other afflictive emotions. And dedicating the merit also, even if you just do some small positive action, just some little thing, someone drops $1 and you hand it back to them, smallest little thing. If you dedicate the merit of that, then it channels that into, becoming a cause for enlightenment. So it doesn't have to be just handing someone back their $1 in ordinary action. Now it becomes part of, moving towards enlightenment. So starting with the bodhicitta wish to benefit others ensures our practice will reach fruition, and it protects us from having that merit be destroyed by anger. And then for the main part of the practice, being concentrated and being free of concepts and distractions has some different levels to it. So basically it means being free of all forms of attachment, and especially being free of pride. And we learned in the last class about the causes of what creates the 6 realms is that the higher realms, the gods, jealous gods, and human realms, these are caused by virtuous actions that are tainted by clinging and attachment. So the God realm is caused by virtuous actions tainted by pride and clinging. The jealous God's realm is caused by virtuous actions tainted by competitiveness, or like trying to like doing something kind to show your moral superiority. So that creates the causes for the jealous God realm. So when we are engaging in virtuous action, we don't want it to be tainted by any of these ordinary emotions and ordinary motivations. So no matter how generous you might be or how learned you might be, as long as you're feeling conceited and proud of what you're doing and feeling contemptuous for those you're helping, nothing positive will come of it. So if it's adulterated with clinging, arrogance, and condescension, then it will not bear fruit. But being free of attachments and concepts also means being free of clinging to whatever practice you're doing as having some intrinsic reality. So for instance, if we think of making offerings to the bodhisattvas, so the bodhisattvas appear in the form of spiritual friends, or as blessings or sacred scriptures or statues and so on. And but these manifestations are like dreams. Again, they're like rainbows, dreams, illusions, mirages. There's no intrinsic existence. And it really is like if you are, I have a friend who he likes to come and go to the Peace Park sometimes, and he's told me that when he feels angry, he can't find it. When he feels angry, he will drive up and down River Road, and the Peace Park is not there. And he's like, okay, I have to go get my right head on and come back. And when he's in the right space of mind, it's always there, right where it always is. So we don't realize it. This is such a convincing illusion. We don't realize it, but it always is. That just like looking at a rainbow, where it's, there's these different factors. There's the humidity, there's the angle of the light, there's the angle in which we are viewing it. And that creates this illusion. And just the appearance of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is the same way. And It's like the Buddha's, they say like the Buddha's compassion is always like radiating like the sun, but we are the ones who turn away from it. So it's so that's always one of those factors in the interdependence is what are we doing with our mind, and are we turning towards that? But so these bodhisattvas, when they appear in the world, they're like magical illusions, and everything else is in the phenomenal world too. So we have an illusory being, myself, using these illusory objects, some fruit or candy or whatever, these are a mirage that I am then offering to this mirage of a Buddha statue. And any result of that offering is also an illusion, which doesn't mean that there's no result, but just that the result is, again, there's not this concrete inherent existence to it. So what sense does it make to be full of pride about the results of an illusory action? If I have a dream in which I did something, I had a dream last night that I saved someone from drowning. You guys should write like news articles about me. I had a dream. I saved someone from drowning in this dream. It was incredible as a hero, but it was a dream. So I'm not going to be all puffed up about it. It was a dream. It's gone. So it's the same. This is a dream. It's not that it's not meaningful. It's not that it doesn't have, because again, the dream feels very real. So if we benefit beings in this dream, they experience the benefit in this dream. And that's a good thing. It's not meaningless. But when a bodhisattva performs a beneficial action, they're totally free from clinging to the concept of a subject who acts, the object who benefits from the action, and the action itself. And that absence of clinging makes the merit infinite. So when you think it's very concrete, you actually you're limiting what's possible there. And then at the end, we dedicate all the merit and positive actions we've done. And we also we can also borrow against our past and future. So we say we dedicate all the merit and positive actions that we just did or will do in the past, in the present, in the future. We dedicate all of that to all beings, and especially our enemies. We should always bring up especially our enemies and the people we least want to help. We should especially bring them to mind. We dedicate the merit that they all may achieve enlightenment. Hello. And we try to dedicate the merit in the same way that these great bodhisattvas do. So any merit that they dedicate within the infinite expanse of their wisdom is inexhaustible. And when we dedicate, it's like putting a drop of water in that ocean. So if you put a drop of water in the ocean is so vast that that drop of water is not going to dry up, right? Because it's part of this giant ocean. So that's what we do with our merit. And not a single prayer vanishes. So any positive action that we do with a pure mind, if we dedicate the merit, it will continually bear positive fruit until we attain enlightenment. There's a prayer from the King of Aspirations for Excellent Conduct says, "Until all beings are free from negative emotions, may my prayers never come to exhaustion." So as bodhisattvas, we have to have an attitude that is extremely vast. We have to keep in mind constantly the infinity of beings and the wish to bring those beings to Buddhahood. And if our mind is vast, then the power of our prayers is unlimited. But when our mind is narrow and rigid and limited, then that also limits the accumulation of merit and the purification of our obscurations. So, and we should never be discouraged by sometimes you think that like, so small, I just such a small thing. There's no way that could benefit anyone, or you think like you say some prayers, but you're like, I'm such a terrible practitioner. What's even the point of dedicating that? I was really distracted in practice. There's not even a point in dedicating that. So we should never be discouraged like that. It's if we keep our minds open and vast, then the effectiveness of our bodhicitta will increase, and the benefit of our merit and our words and deeds, that will all increase too. So we should just always maintain that vastness of mind. And there are prayers that another prayer that's really great that we can find inspiration is wherever the sky ends, there ends the number of beings. Wherever beings, destinies, and emotions end, only there end my prayers. So these three supreme points include the whole practice and attitude of the Mahayana. If we practice with the three supreme points, whether we're doing Dzogchen practice, Hatha Yoga practice, whatever kind of practice, if you have these three supreme points, it becomes a Mahayana practice. If you don't have these three supreme points, and if you're not practicing with the bodhicitta, then your practice is just going to stagnate and not go anywhere. And then anytime that we feel like we have some modicum of success in, maybe we've in some way blended our mind with the Dharma or had some success in our practice, if that ever happens, instead of feeling pride about it, we should dedicate the merit to all beings and aspire to do more. And if we just constantly, checking, am I practicing in this way? Am I starting with the bodhicitta intention? Am I remembering emptiness? Am I remembering the illusory nature of, the subject and object and action? Am I remembering that? And am I dedicating this merit to all beings? We should constantly be checking to make sure that we are doing that and remembering that. And if we keep doing that and we just check our mind and slowly let go of our negative qualities and slowly take on more positive qualities, we will progress to Buddhahood. So until we realize emptiness, we can never forget this enlightened attitude of bodhicitta. But when we realize emptiness perfectly, then we don't need any effort for unconditional compassion to arise, because compassion is the expression of emptiness. So if we have this pure attitude of mind, wishing for all beings to happy, just the same as we would wish for ourselves, thinking, may all beings be happy and free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May all beings reach perfect happiness, remain in it, and live in equanimity. May they maintain love for all others without discrimination. When we have that kind of mind has a natural intrinsic power to benefit others. And right now, we are vulnerable to many gross and subtle emotions. So we're kind of like a blade of grass that bends whichever way the wind blows. We don't, we're not strong in this practice yet. So if we're trying to help others right now, it's probably going to be more of a distraction for us than it is going to actually be bringing benefit to others. So for right now, the best thing for us to do is to gain stability in our practice, work on this bodhicitta attitude, and just continue to grow our bodhicitta. And eventually we'll be able to put our love and compassion into action that in a way that actually does benefit beings. And the bodhicitta is so powerful that if you have bodhicitta, you are immune to negative forces. When they manifest, they'll have no way to create obstacles or cause harm to you. So, for instance, the root teacher of Patrul Rinpoche, Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu, one time a vindictive spirit decided to take his life. And full of harmful thoughts, this spirit arrived at the entrance to his cave. And he saw this serene old man sitting there with his eyes closed, just so peaceful, just full of love and compassion. His head was encircled with white hair, just this old man sitting there, just radiating love and compassion. And just at the sight of this, the spirit's bad thoughts just disappeared in an instant. And he was awestruck, and he contemplated the old man, and the bodhicitta was born within him. And he made the promise to never take anyone else's life again. And after this, whenever an opportunity to harm someone arose, this image of this serene old man radiating love and compassion would instantly appear in his mind. And the spirit lost all his power to harm. So then bodhicitta has two aspects, relative and absolute. So absolute bodhicitta is the realization of emptiness, which is attained by bodhisattvas on one of the supreme levels, or bhumis. Until that realization of absolute bodhicitta dawns, the emphasis should be placed on relative bodhicitta, which is the altruistic mind and this wish to benefit others and be free of selfish motivation. So only if we've developed the love and compassion of relative bodhicitta can we ever have absolute bodhicitta take birth in our beings. So, and if we practice relative bodhicitta correctly, absolute bodhicitta will naturally be mixed in with it and present there. And then if we continue practicing, then eventually they will be fully realized. So we focus on relative bodhicitta, which has two stages: the aspiration to benefit others, and then putting that aspiration into action. And the difference between the two is like planning a trip and then actually going on the trip, getting in the car and going. The practice of relative bodhicitta consists of, one, the meditation practice of exchanging oneself and others, Tonglen, which we're going to be practicing today, and two, the post-meditation practice of using unfavorable circumstances on the path, which is what we'll be spending the next two classes on. So in this practice of exchanging yourself and others, this practice of exchanging yourself and others can be approached step by step. So the first stage is to see yourself and others as being equally important. Others want to be happy and they don't want to suffer, just like you. So we should wish happiness for others and wish them freedom from suffering in the same way that we wish it for ourselves. And in the second stage is the exchange of yourself and others. And you wish that others may have your happiness and that you may take their suffering. You're actually putting them like above you, and you are saying, have my happiness, I will take your suffering. And then there is a third stage, which comes later after we practice these for a while. Third stage is to cherish others more than yourself, like the great bodhisattvas who, when upon meeting a blind person, would have no hesitation in just offering them their own eyes. Because at that point, all selfish preoccupation has completely disappeared. And you understand the dreamlike nature of reality. So what? I'm going to offer you my dream eyeballs. It's a dream. They understand that, and they understand the dreamlike nature of self. So they understand there's nothing to protect other than this dream of self, So understanding that, it doesn't feel quite so risky then. giving someone your eyes. You think you're really going to be suffering. So anyways, at that point, all selfish preoccupation has completely disappeared, and you're solely concerned with the welfare of others. You're not concerned about yourself at all. So we continue with this practice of exchanging self and others until we reach that kind of compassion, or we would not even have a thought of ourselves. We just solely think of the welfare of others. Shantideva says in The Way of the Bodhisattva, all the joy the world contains has come through wishing happiness for others. All the misery the world contains has come through wanting pleasure for oneself. Is there need for lengthy explanation? Childish beings look out for themselves, while Buddhas labor for the good of others. See the difference that divides them. That sounded like some good thunder. I might not be having a drum circle today. That's good. So the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, he said, to benefit beings is to benefit me. To harm beings is to harm me. Just as a mother rejoices when someone is helpful to her child, my heart gladdens when someone is helpful to any being. Just as a mother is distressed when someone harms her child, my heart is distressed when someone harms any being. So the best way, if you think about, so we are repaying the kindness of our parents, we can also think about repaying the kindness of the Buddha who taught us these methods with which we can find liberation. And the best way to repay the Buddha's kindness is to have love and compassion for all beings as if they were each our only child. And to help them is the best offering we can possibly give to the Buddha. And the Buddha said, incense, flowers, lamps, and so on are not the best offering to the Buddha. The best offering to the Buddha is to benefit all beings. Therefore, to make offerings to the Buddha, benefit all beings. Your offering will delight all Buddhas and make all beings happy. There is no other way to please the victorious ones than to bring all beings to happiness. So the best way to fulfill the wishes of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is to have overflowing love and unbearable compassion for all beings. And as a beginner, we can't do very much for beings right now. We can give them some food. We can help beings a little bit. We can maybe teach them a little bit of Dharma, but not much. So what we should do is just meditate constantly on love and compassion until our being is just imbued with them, until we're like that old man in the cave, just radiating love and compassion. And so this practice of Tonglen, of exchanging suffering and happiness, is something that we don't just practice once. We don't just practice it now and again, but it's something that we should practice again and again and again for months and years until the bodhicitta fully blooms within us. And the great teachers, Longchen Rabjam and Jigme Lingpa, their teachings became so widespread and have been of benefit to so many people because their minds were constantly pervaded with compassion and bodhicitta. Jigme Lingpa had a great disciple named Dodrup Jigme Trinley Oser, who went to Kham, which is in the eastern provinces of Tibet. And he helped thousands of people by transmitting to them the teachings of the Longchen Nyingtig, the heart essence of the vast expanse. And then he later wrote to Jigme Lingpa, this could only happen because I had meditated for so long in mountain solitudes on compassion. So I think a lot of us feel often like we are up against impossible odds with trying to bring our goals to fruition, whether that's in our own life, but especially here at KPC, we are trying to do a lot to help others, and it takes a lot to run this place. And it's often just really amazing and incredible when you look around at what has been done. And the reason why so much benefit is possible here is because of Jetsama's love and compassion. And through that love and compassion, she's able to accomplish what seems impossible. Like even just how we got this building here, how we got this temple here seemed impossible at the time. And so many projects that we've had have seemed impossible, but it's because she is of her love and compassion that she is able to make this happen. So when each of us are trying to take some part in that and trying to also take part in making the impossible happen, we should remember that if we're feeling defeated if we feel like we can't do it, we're not enough, we don't know, how could I possibly do that thing I'm being asked to do? Meditate on love and compassion, because when we are imbued with love and compassion, when we arouse the bodhicitta within us, anything is possible. That is what the true power is. When Guru Rinpoche went to Tibet and he tamed the harmful spirits and creating a way for Buddhism to flourish in the country, he didn't tame them through anger or a legal argument or something. He tamed them through compassion. And the Buddha Amitabha, Buddha Amitabha can bring any being to Buddhahood just if that being hears Buddha Amitabha's name. Just by hearing Amitabha's name, that being can go be reborn in Amitabha's realm of Dewa Chen. And that is only possible because of Amitabha's love and compassion. That is the power by which that happens, because of his love and compassion, and he made that specific prayer. So, so if we meditate on love and compassion, then that's our biggest superpower. So now we're going to do a meditation on compassion. And I think we're going to run a little bit over, but I think that's okay because there's not going to be a drum circle with this thunder. So it's great. The Buddhas know I'm running late, giving me a little out. I'll take that as a blessing. If you want to take a minute to just stretch your legs for a second, this is a long class. And I know by the time we get to the meditation, I've got restless leg syndrome. So if you guys want to stretch your legs for a second, please do. So each week we're doing a different Tonglen visualization. The majority of the practice is the same week to week. So if you've been here in previous weeks, you'll recognize the most of the practice. And at the end, we do a little twist and we do a different kind of Tonglen visualization. So this practice is one that we can do anytime. You can do the practice of Tonglen in a very simple way. You can do it very quickly. You always start with the arousing bodhicitta, and then we do the visualization of sending and receiving, which there's different versions of that visualization. But but we do a visualization in which we are taking on the sufferings of others and sending them our happiness. And we always start with someone that we love or someone who's easy for us to feel compassion for. And then we add in enemies and make sure that we're thinking of the people that are hard to feel compassion for. And we also expand the visualization. We include more and more people. So, and then at the end, we always dedicate. But so we're going to be doing a long version of this practice because we're going to be following these extraordinary pith instructions from Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche that explain how to make the practice more effective. And we're going to be focusing really on that arousing bodhicitta part of the practice and spending some time on that. But you can also do this in a faster way. So for instance, as an example, the other day, I was out with my son on our front porch We walked outside, and in like 2 seconds before I could even pull out the bug spray, I had like multiple mosquito bites on my arms, and they were so itchy. It was just like, wow, these are so itchy. And it immediately made me think of a news story that I had recently seen about a man who is being held at the detention center in the Everglades, and he attempted to go on a hunger strike, and the guards. Because of the conditions there, he attempted to go on a hunger strike to protest, and the guards punished him by taking him outside, uh, shackled with his hands cuffed behind his back, and taking him outside and leaving him outside for 3 hours. And I was thinking about being outside for 3 hours in the Everglades and how many mosquitoes there must be, how just riddled with mosquito bites this man must have been. And with his hands handcuffed, that there's no way he could even scratch them. And just, I mean, I was going nuts from these like 3 mosquito bites, and I could scratch them. And I was just thinking about this man who must have suffered so much in the situation. And so I did Tonglen for a minute, you know. So I imagined him, and I imagined taking on his suffering and sending him my happiness, and I expanded it out to the other beings in that detention center. And then and then my son needed me, so I dedicated, and that was it. But if I had, because he's 3 and you've got only got 30 seconds. But if I had had more time, I could have then gone to, like, you know, expand it out to maybe all prisoners and their guards, and, you know, and then maybe, you know, all beings that encourage this kind of abuse of others, and, you know, other, you know, and then maybe expanding out further to just all beings who are imprisoned by their karmic, you know, obscurations. And, you know, like, you can expand it out, and you can get kind of creative with that. You can follow if you've got more time or less time. But that's a way we can just very quickly practice this anytime something arouses our compassion. So first, it's important to start by arousing a deeply felt warmth, sensitivity, and compassion for all beings. So first, we're going to begin by thinking about someone who's been very kind and loving to you. This could be your own mother. This could be your own mother or father. If it's your mom, you could imagine how she gave you life, how she suffered the discomforts of pregnancy to bring you into this world, the pain of childbirth, how she looked after you as you grew up, keeping you safe, keeping you clothed and warm and fed. She was ready to make any sacrifice for you and to put your welfare before her own. So just contemplate that. When you feel strong in love and compassion, imagine step by step that this person is undergoing the sufferings of the six realms. In the hell realm, she is repeatedly, brutally killed and revived. She is tossed into a boiling cauldron of molten bronze. She suffers in agony before your eyes. Then imagine she's been reborn as a starving spirit, just skin and bones, who's not even caught sight of food for 12 years. She stretches her hands out to you, imploring you, "My child, do you have anything you can give me to eat?" Imagine her reborn as an animal, a terrified doe being chased by hunters and their dogs. In panic, she leaps off a high cliff to escape them, but falls with unbearable pain, shattering all her bones. Still alive, but unable to move, she's finished off by the hunter's knives. Continue to imagine her undergoing, in quick succession, situation after situation of suffering. Contemplating this, an intense feeling of compassion will irresistibly well up in your mind. At that moment, turn that intense compassion to all beings, realizing that each one of them must surely have been your mother many times and deserves the same love and compassion as your mother of this present life. It's important to include specifically all those whom you now consider enemies or troublemakers. Reflect deeply about everything that all these beings are going through as they wander endlessly in samsara's vicious cycle of suffering. Think about old, infirm people unable to care for themselves, about all those who are sick and in pain, people who are desperate and impoverished, lacking even the most basic necessities, about people suffering famine and starvation, the pangs of hunger and thirst, those who are physically blind, and about those who are spiritually destitute, starved of the nourishment of Dharma, and blind to any authentic vision of truth. Think about all those who suffer as slaves to their own minds, constantly maddened by desire and aggression, and about those who harm one another without respite. Visualize all these sentient beings as a crowd in front of you, and let all the different forms that their suffering takes arise vividly in your mind. Now, with an intense feeling of compassion, begin the practice of sending and receiving. Start by focusing on your most hated enemy or someone who has caused much trouble and difficulty for you. Bring that person to mind. Consider that as your breath goes out, all your happiness, all your vitality, merit, good fortune, health, and enjoyment is carried out to him on your breath in the form of cool, soothing, luminous white nectar. Make the following prayer. May this truly go to my enemy and be entirely given to him. Visualize that he absorbs this white nectar, which provides him with everything that he needs. If his life was to be short, imagine that now it's prolonged. If he needs money, imagine that now he is wealthy. If he is sick, that now he's cured. And if he's unhappy, now imagine him so full of joy that he feels like singing and dancing. As you breathe in, consider that you take into yourself, in the form of a dark mass, all the sickness, obscurations, and mental poisons your enemy may have had, and that he is thereby completely relieved of all his afflictions. Think that his sufferings come to you as easily as mountain mist wafted away by the wind. As you take his suffering into you, you feel great joy and bliss mingled with the experience of emptiness. And now do the same for the infinity of beings you are visualizing before you. Send them all of your happiness and take on their suffering. Repeat this again and again. Now for the twist. Now visualize yourself transformed into a wish-fulfilling jewel, radiant and blue like a sapphire, a little larger than your own body, on top of a victory banner. Victory banner looks something like this. If you're not familiar with a victory banner, it looks something like this. And a victory banner signifies the victory of the enlightened teachings, victory over all disagreement, disharmony, or obstacles, and the attainment of temporary and ultimate happiness. So we're visualizing ourselves transformed into a wish-fulfilling jewel, radiant and blue like a sapphire, a little larger than our own body, on top of this victory banner. And the jewel effortlessly fulfills the needs and aspirations of whoever addresses a prayer to it. So just visualize like that. that's one of the versions of the Tonglen visualization. So you can do this practice anytime, in all circumstances. You can spend a long time on the bodhicitta visualization like we did, or you can just kind of like sometimes just kind of remember the bodhicitta, bring it, just give rise to it real fast, and then do your practice. And constantly practicing this, you'll reach the core of the practice of compassion and bodhicitta. And then also I'll mention regarding the dreamlike nature of reality, Dzongchen Khyentse Rinpoche encourages us to just throughout the day, just remind yourself that this is a dream. It's a really good practice. He says just doing that is like such a good practice. Just throughout the day, occasionally, this is a dream. And just, you could set an alarm on your phone if you want, just remind you, 2:00. Oh, this is a dream. Right. If you want to make a ritual out of it, if you want to like prostrate 3 times to the altar, be like, this is a dream, you can do that. You can also just think of it. You can just remind yourself. But just doing that over and over again does so much for us. So that's it.
We'll do a short Chenrezig practice.
Just gonna put this practice in the chat for those online. Okay, folks online, the Chenrezig practice is in the chat.
So this first prayer we'll do just one.
Mugen yogi num jansam, pemage sar dompola, yatsen chogi ngodrupne, pemajong ne jesura. Ordu kandro mangpopor, yetki jesu daudruki, jinji lok chir shek su so, guru pema siddhi om. Om Benzer Guru Pema Siddhi Om.
Let's switch to English. Your thousand arms are the thousand universal monarchs. Your 1,000 eyes, the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate age. You who teach each and every one of us according to our needs. Lord Avalokiteshvara, to you I pay homage. And our mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. We'll take just a few minutes to repeat that mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum Kri. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme And then we'll do the dedication on the last page. By this virtue, may I swiftly accomplish the state of Chenrezig, and may all sentient beings without exception be placed in that very state. And by this effort, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. May their minds be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine throughout all realms.
Right. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thanks.
And thank you, Atira, for teaching today on Tonglen, and we invite you to continue to come back for the additional teachings on Tonglen that will continue for 2 more weeks. Thank you to everybody for joining us, both here and again virtually. And we invite you, if you wish, it's traditional to make offerings to our teacher Jessima Palamo, to Atira Zeoli, and to PPC, the temple. If you're not already on our mailing list, tara.org, we invite you to do that because we send out periodic announcements about our upcoming teachings and activities that take place. And so it's a great way to understand and look forward to other things that are going on here at the temple. So thank you again very much.
Thanks.